Okay, so this is my first video. Something I've been wanting to do for quite a while. Just university uh, demands haven't let me, but now it's summer, so hopefully I'll be able to put out a few videos a week. This video is going to be aimed at the complete beginner, but the video should become more and more advanced as you go along. So if this is far too basic for you, as it may very well be, check back at a later video, as there may be something useful for you. Okay, so just before I start, just to let you know, I'm going to be recording from two different locations. Um, this is where I live in at university, so I'm in Nottingham. So if you hear gunshots and police sirens, that's completely normal. And the other place that I live, you may hear cows and stuff like that. So just go with it. Um, okay, so starting with this, I'm going to start. Going to go through a few things today. The basics of kind of this window and the different windows you can look at. How to kind of create tracks. Going to look at the difference potentially between stepping up from something like GarageBand and the difference with when you're actually using Logic. Also look a little bit at Ultrabeat, make a quick beat, and then just some of the very basic functions of kind of the software, very basic. So to begin with, you've got obviously all these tools up here. These are completely customizable. I will do a video on that because there are some very useful ones that you can add. Again, down here to the transport bar. These are all your controls. You'll probably recognize them from CD players, hi-fis, all that kind of thing. Again, completely customizable. I will be doing a video on things you can add to this as well, most notably capture record. This is just kind of information really. So you've got here is the time in the track. So if I press space, which is the shortcut for play, you'll notice that it starts over and it tells you where we are in terms of time. The ones below tells you what bar we're on. Then you have, this is your cycle region. So this is this bit, this green thing here. You can turn that on by clicking or unclicking, or you can just press C. Now if you move this around, you can move that bit around to extend it, or you can move this bit around to extend it. Alternatively, you can grab it right in the middle and just move it as a whole. Obviously what that does, if I just make it very short, if I just press play, it's basically just a loop region. And it will just loop something for you, very useful if you're maybe listening to a track and maybe trying to write a new part for it. One thing that I will show you, very useful if you're kind of in the arrange phase and you're kind of changing things around, testing things out, instead of kind of cutting parts of your work out, if you invert it, so I move the left icon so it's move the right icon so it's the left, so you get the kind of the hashed cycle region. If I press play now, you'll notice that the area that is hashed out is completely skipped. So goes, and then skips straight to 14. Just like that. So again, very useful. It's down here. You can click that if you want. Most people will just use the shortcuts. As I said, is C. Okay, then you have, these figures here. These just represent which number this is at, this right hand indicator and then the left hand indicator. So all very simple. The 120, that's just your BPM, so beats per minute. If you're making music, I'm sure you know what that is. To adjust it, you can click and hold and drag it up ridiculously high, or you could drag it down. Obviously, what you can also do, you can double click and type maybe 126, something normal like that. If you click the other side of the decimal points as well, and you kind of you click on whichever zero you want and hold, you can make very fine adjustments. Not that you'll normally have to. The 133, that is simply the length of the track, and if we scroll all the way to the right, you'll notice that the numbers after this little square here are grayed out. So you can extend the length of your track. You can either literally grab this or reduce this. Alternatively, you can double click again and type maybe 130, and then I type that in. Yep, and then we are back at 130 there. Again, very easy. This is your time signature, which, if you know anything about music theory, will be very basic T, but again, you can adjust it if you want to, and you'll notice the grid changes correspondingly. And the 16th is also a very useful thing, but I'll probably do a video on that when I look more deeply at individual windows. The NO in and NO out, that simply just represents what MIDI data is coming in and going out of the software. I don't currently have a keyboard connected because I needed the USB, so nothing will appear there. And then here you've got your little meters. Important to keep an eye on these, especially the CPU, especially if you're running kind of not the most powerful computer in the world. If you're using a lot of CPU hogging plugins, this will gradually build up as you're playing your track, and then if it goes to the red, you'll get some message along the lines of Logic has overloaded, and then your track will stop playing. So keep an eye on that. I will do a video on how to cut down your CPU usage, just little tricks that you can just implement into your workflow, which will just help to cut that down. Moving over to, we'll go to the inspector next. This is inspector. If you click it, opens. You can also use I to open it. This is where you input kind of your kind of software synths and your samplers and stuff like that. It's also where you put your effects and your compressors and where you set up your buses. But we'll do separate videos on that. Appreciate that if you aren't as new to this as I am aiming this video at, you will have no idea what most of that is. But very basics, volume there, and if you press Alt, I believe it's Alt, I'm not using a Mac keyboard because mine is broken, but if you press Alt and click, or it's one of the buttons in the bottom left hand corner, it resets it to the default. Same applies to this. If we move it, pan it to the right or pan it to the left, just if you don't know what that is, imagine you're wearing headphones. If you pan it to the left, all the sound is coming through your left headphone and vice versa, and then the more you mix it in, the more kind of the balance is. And again, if you press Alt and click, it resets it to default. Quite useful, saves you kind of trying to balance it when you get to those stupid numbers, because it can be a bit fiddly. Okay, we'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a second. Before I do that, you've got the bounce button. That's simply to consolidate all your tracks. Say you have numerous tracks on this, where this would be where all your music is arranged. It consolidates it into one audio file. So basically, it's the last thing you do. Colors lets you color in your work if you're that way inclined. Notes, quite useful. I'll probably do a video on the importance of notes because they're completely underrated and not many people know how to use them properly. And if you're working with someone like a vocalist who doesn't really know your work, and who you're having to direct, it can be very useful giving them prompts. List, don't worry about that, it's not particularly important. Media, start with the audio bin. This lists all the audio files in your track, and you can also input files into this as kind of a quick drag across. Loops, if you are potentially as new as the video is aimed at, you may still be relying somewhat on loops. Some people hate them, some people love them. I think most people agree that they're completely fine as long as you kind of make it your own still, and you're not literally just assembling someone else's work, because you might as well do a jigsaw kind of thing. But to use this, if you've got Logic Studio, I think it's called Logic Studio, it comes with a stupid amount of loops, which you'll probably never even use. But if you've got this system here, you can kind of click, maybe I want electric, guitar, no bass, accidentally click that, and it'll give you a whole list of them. Now it gives you all the information, tempo, key. What it will do, obviously that says 128 and our track is at 126, as you can tell there. It will change the tempo. So imagine we're using this cycle here and we've got a loop going. We made a beat, drum beat, but we want a electric bass and we want to try them out. It will adjust the 128 to the 126, and then you just click on them and it should start playing. And it does. If that's too loud or too quiet, you can kind of mix it into your track using that, and then you just scroll down and it'll start playing them again. All very simple. Just click on it again and I think it stops. There you go. And then you can reset it if you want to do another search just by clicking that. Personally, I use loops. The only time I really use them is shakers, or maybe conga drums, which are very much the person who plays the conga is all about the dynamics of them hitting it and the way they hit it and stuff, and but still kind of cut them up, make them your own and stuff. Um, Library I will do in a minute. Browse is basically it lets you access your hard drive, and then if you've got samples, for example, if I go to this folder and then samples, I have two samples. This isn't my main computer, by the way, if you're wondering why those are so out of date. But that's a very good pack. I would recommend that. Um, so you can kind of take samples from these folders and then put them into your bin, and you can drag them across quickly. Um, Also, you can access your old projects. We go music, Logic, and then you've got all your projects. If you've been making music for any amount of time, you probably have a stupid number of stupidly named tracks that are unfinished, which you know would be like number ones, but you just can't finish them. So yeah, you'll have that, and you can access those there. Now, it's possibly quite likely that you are coming from maybe a GarageBand kind of background, something like that. And if that's the case, something like this in the media library area will look quite familiar to you. Now, the problem with GarageBand, and something you'll need to appreciate, and I'm not slating GarageBand at all because it's a very nice little piece of software, but most people that move from GarageBand to Logic, their work or the initial tracks they make in Logic will not be as good. And the reason for that is that GarageBand does a lot for you in the background that you're not aware of. And you can to some extent get Logic to do that for you as well, but it's not good in the long run. So try and kind of ease yourself off it. An example of this, if we go to maybe this test kit, which I set up earlier to prove this point, if we go to synth bass because they're cool or something, dark trance bass sounds nice. We click that once, and then we come over to the channel strip, and obviously this is a channel strip here in the inspector, which we talked about earlier. And just to note, if you click on any of these, ignore the delay line and arpeggiator, hip hop, house, it changes the channel strip here. And as you can see, we only clicked once, yet Logic added a EXS24, which is a sampler, and I'll do a video on all of these different things that come with Logic Studio. It also added a compressor and a EQ, and let's just open that as well. Okay, so we clicked once and it added all of this. Now, forgetting the arguments that you may hear about using presets and stuff, with sounds, we're actually using a preset with everything here. So we've got something that's already it's already EQ'd it for us, it's already compressed it for us. Now, the problem with that is compressing it in itself, I believe, I don't know if that is like a predetermined preset or it's whether it's specific to the sound or not, but either way, it's an issue because every sound needs to be compressed and EQ'd in a way that makes it fit in the track. It's somewhat irrelevant that a sound sounds amazing in isolation. If you have really compressed, and like for example here, most producers would tell you that you really shouldn't be boosting those frequencies, especially kind of the arrow to the left. That's kind of too much. So you get very generic EQ. EQ can be used creatively, and even if you get that, you're not going to be having a track that fits within the rest of the mix if you just use default EQs. EQ is one of the easiest way to make your music fit, and you can have a very wide and very full sound and very complex things going on at the same time. Using the EQ, I'll do a video on EQ on the basics of how to kind of get two things to fit together. And then you've got the compressor. So there is the issue. If you use this, it's very GarageBand-esque, but it has its advantages. Obviously, if you're new to this, you may not know what compression is, you may not know what EQing is. So by all means, load that up. But I would suggest open these guys up and have a play, and maybe write a little loop or just a repetitive note, and then just play around with these and see what they do. And trying to get to learn them. I'll do a video on each of these because they're incredibly important, both of them. So that's kind of the GarageBand kind of style. Now, what you want to be aiming to do, if I just get rid of that because this is the second time I've done this tutorial because it didn't record the first time. Let's assume you want to make a track from scratch and do it kind of from the ground up, so not using any of the assistances kind of that Logic can give you, like doing it everything yourself. So you've got two buttons here. Now the first button will create is basically used for creating a completely brand new track. Now you can choose the number, so if you type in 5 there, it will create 5, etc. Very simple. Now an audio track, as I said, very basic, but if in principle an audio track is there's an external source of the sound and it's being recorded via some sort of microphone. So you're looking at like live drums, live vocals, that kind of thing. External MIDI, that's more concerned with if you have an external synthesizer, imagine like a Korg R3 or something like that, or a Nord lead, something like that, and you're getting Logic to coordinate with the actual hardware itself, and then you have software instruments. Now if you're very new to this, you'll predominantly be using software instruments, and then you'll probably use audio as well. I wouldn't really recommend using external synthesizers. I have one and it's too much hassle, and the quality of soft synths kind of in modern day is sufficient. So if you click that, obviously this little button here, just to clarify, opens that media tab that we just looked at. I have it unclicked because I don't use that. But if you're more comfortable having that open automatically, just simply click that. Outputs, you can choose your outputs. You can have a bus if you want, but just leave it at output 1 and 2, or stereo output, same thing. And don't worry about the ascending button. So we click create, very simple, and then we have a new audio track, software instrument track, sorry, instrument 6. Now if you double click on it, you can name it. So let's call it beat, nice and easy. Now at the moment there is nothing on beat, there is no sound. If we press play, nothing's coming out, and that's because we have no MIDI regions in our arrange window telling Logic to play notes. So what we'll do, we will create a beat. So actually before that, let's do this first. So if we hold this down, go to I/O, which stands for input and output, hold that down and then scroll down to Ultra Beat. You'll have this regardless of your version of Logic. And you've got two options. You've got stereo and you've got multi-output. Don't worry about multi-outputs. It needs its own video. It's quite complicated and there's no point confusing with it now. So just go to stereo and then this opens. And you may have two possible reactions to this. You may either think that looks amazing or you may be terrified. Both are valid. It is technically a very, very powerful synthesizer. It's a drum synthesizer. So it uses waveforms and stuff like that to synthesize the sound of drums. You can also add samples of drums to kind of mix that in with your synthesized sound. So it's very versatile. You can also do some other crazy stuff with it, which I might do when I do the video on Ultra Beat if it's not too confusing. Now, just so you get a little bit of an idea of how the synth works, not that I'm going to go through any of this. This here is kind of effectively, you can think of it as an oscillator. It's a noise generator. Well, it makes a sound. This is one as well, and you can set it to different modes. And this creates noise, which is useful for snares and hats and synthesizing those kind of sounds. I'm not going to go into how to design sounds because that is very complicated. But down the left we have all the samples of this is on default still. So we've got the bass, for example. This is like your keyboard, so you can click as your open hat. These are all completely electronic sounds, so these have been synthesized using Ultra Beat. So it's quite, you can make some nice clear tones with it. It's a good snare, kick almost between a dance and an 808. It's got like that low end with a high kind of release. So that's it. Now you've got this here where you can add things in, and like if we just delete that, we can add extra notes in when we want. Obviously that looks a little bit fiddly, and it looks fiddly because it is fiddly, so you wouldn't use that. I don't use it there. If you go to full view in the bottom right hand corner, you get your pattern area, and this is where you can draw your pattern and make your own beat. Now obviously there's already a sequence in here that Logic has come with. Now you've got a few options here. You can either click one that's already there and drag it around and hold, and it will delete it, Alternatively, you can go down to the sequence, right click and click clear, and it will delete everything there. Alternatively, you can see this list here. There's 24. If it says SQ by, it means there's a sequence on there. Don't worry about the note. That's for changing kind of between sequences, which no one does and no one uses. So alternatively, from the very start, you could just click one without a sequence on it. Very simple. Now, making a beat on this is incredibly easy. The first thing you want to do is turn on the sequencer, and then let's make a house beat. So house beats often have 4 to the floor, so kick on 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can draw them in 1, 2, 3, 4. Alternatively, save yourself a little bit of time, you can right click and click add every downbeat and it will draw it in for you. Saves all of 5 seconds, but it all adds up. And then you can trial this out if you click play here. If you click space as well, it'll start. So if you start this MIDI region, if you start kind of the cycle in the main arrange area, it will also start the cycle on the ultra beat. But what you can do, if you just click this, you'll notice that you can start the ultra beat independently of the arrange area. So obviously that's very boring. So you could add what we got here. That's an alright snare. So you could add a snare on every other beat. This is house beat 101. It's very, very simple. Okay, and then we can add a tom on the offbeat there, and then maybe, what's that like? Maybe some off open hi-hats. And obviously if you want to delete something, you just click on it and you do it again. Very simple. You could add a symbol. That's not a very nice symbol, but and then maybe mid-tom. Not a great beat, but it's a beat. And then you turn that off and then you have your beat. Now obviously you'll notice that this is in here and there's still nothing here. So to get this kind of information into here, all you need to do is hold this down and drag it up, and there you have your MIDI region. Now you might not want to use that kit, and obviously you probably won't want to necessarily use the default kit, and you won't be designing your own sound. So if you click in the arrange area and you press play, obviously it'll play the beat. Very simple. Now if you come up here and you click that, you can choose between drum kits. Now it's not always the best idea to change drum kit once you've already made the beat, as types of sound won't necessarily add up. So just because you use the kick on one part of the region won't mean that it will be a kick on the next kit. But if, for example, we click deep house kit, being this as a deep house beat, and then we try it again, that did sound too bad, being as it was wasn't written with those sounds. So again, so you can change your kits. You can use these arrows to switch between kits if you want to. The drum banks simply are, for example, a whole drum beat of hi-hats or kicks, that kind of thing. And don't worry about the tutorial settings. What it is important to do, make sure you turn off ultra beat. It's quite easy not to and to forget to, but if you have a region in here playing and this playing, it'll play twice and it'll continue playing. So even when there's no region, as will be demonstrated here, you'll notice that it plays. It will be perceived as normal once this region is here, but you'll notice once this indicator gets past there, despite there being no region, it will continue. There you go. So try to turn off your ultra beats, because you don't want to get to the stage where you have 15 ultra beats, and then you get to the drop in your track where it's just supposed to be kind of the melody and something's still playing on the ultra beat and you can't figure out why. Now obviously this is only one region. If you go over here and drag this across, you can loop it. Now you can loop it in two ways. You can either press L and then this loops it for the entire track, all 133 bars of it, and then you can kind of cut it where you want. You literally go up to it, hover on the upper half of it and click and it'll cut it. Alternatively, you can drag it out. Now, what you'll notice, that arrow is round, but if you lower it down a bit, it kind of goes square. Now this one simply extends the MIDI region, so you could put more notes in it, but it doesn't do anything other than that. So drag that back. You want to scroll up a bit to get the one that's round, and then you drag it out, and drag out maybe 4 bars, and then it'll just keep playing, and you'll note that it will play again once it gets to here. Simple as that. Okay, now just to finish off, you've made a beat, you've created a track, you understand the basics of the arrange area. Obviously they are much more complex than that. What I will do, I will just go through the final other windows which are there, just so you know they're there. You probably won't go into any detail on what they do, but so you know they're there. What I do, I set up screen sets, but you can get to these things in numerous ways. So for example, the piano roll, being as we have a MIDI region here, if we click on this and then press the P button, shortcut to the piano roll. So this is our MIDI. It looks in a way similar to what we're using on Ultrabeat. So this would be our kick. If we click that, it'll be kick. And then each one of the notes is a different drum basically, and they're yellow because that's the velocity. I'll go into velocity in another video, but it's very simple. Now if you wanted to add something in the piano region, if you press escape and then it brings up all your tools, don't concern yourself with the majority of these, but if you either press the number 2 or click pencil tool, you can add in more tracks. We're actually at the bass section of the Ultrabeat now, and if you don't like it, double click and it will disappear. So that's the piano roll. You also have the mixer. So this is where the easier way of mixing your tracks. So instead, if I just go back to the arrange window, instead of using kind of clicking on that and then clicking that and adjusting the volume here, if you just use your mixer, you can have all your tracks there. You can have, so we've got all our 4 tracks here, although we've only used kind of this beat. These are all kind of things that I set up for my session. So this is always set up as a template for whenever I start a session, so I don't have to set it up again. I might go through how I set up my template, because I add to it whenever I see something that I like and that I use a lot. I add to it. You also have the environment, which makes people cry, because it just looks scary, and it is a little bit. It takes a while to get used to, but once you understand it, you can do some really cool stuff inside it. But for example, if you delete one of these wires, Logic will stop making any noise, so you have to be careful. But you've got stuff like chord memorizers and the stuff you saw on the first screen, kind of the arpeggiator and the delay line, are all set up in the environment, so you do need them to some extent. But yeah, that's the first video. It's almost difficult to do this first video because it's trying to encompass quite a lot of the basic tools. Now I could go through some of the very basic things like this. We'll mute the track, and this will solo the track. So if you had numerous one of these tracks, it would only play this one, whereas it would play all the other ones except this one if we mute it. You can mute channel strips. You can also mute the actual MIDI region. So we can solo that. And even if all of these were soloed as well, as long as this one's soloed as well, only the region that is soloed, so it's kind of a double layering of soloing, will play, and the same applies to muting. So you can do that by pressing S and press S again to undo it, and if you press M, you mute it, and the same applies. The record button, I wouldn't really be too concerned about. You just press R. Most people and most producers I know just press R. You can enable it. It's a little bit different for audio. The lock, if you right click here, I've already got it set up, you see, but you've got it here, I believe, protect. I'll unclick it and I'll do it from scratch. If you right click on any of these, and then click protect, so that it stops you accidentally deleting your track. And as much as that sounds ridiculous, it can happen quite easily, because you can kind of select different things. For example, you can have this track selected but this MIDI region selected, so you go to maybe delete this track and then it'll try and delete your MIDI region, and you wouldn't have realized. Imagine you're scrolled up and you've got a whole list of tracks, you wouldn't have realized that you deleted it. So this way, when I try to do that, then the track is protected and cannot be changed. There you go. Damn it, what have I done? And it just protects you. And then to undo it, because obviously you may want to edit it, you just do that. It's very simple. Okay, but that kind of completes the first tutorial. As I said, it is very difficult to do the first tutorial because there is so much in the basics and you never know how much detail to go into each. The next video will hopefully come out in kind of a day or 2 days. I've got nothing to do at the moment, so I might do a few this week. If you have any questions, because I appreciate that was slightly all over the place, ask in the comments. But yeah, thanks for watching.